I'm the owner of Trinity Chiropractic Center. We're located in Johnstown, Colorado. Our main specialty is family care. I work on athletes as well. I have some professional athletes that I work with on a monthly basis. We work with some corporations as well, and we're fast growing as well. But going into it a little bit, so history of chiropractic actually goes back all the way to ancient Egypt. They were called just bone treaters. What they ended up doing was they treated any things that were diagnosed with bones. We even found some stuff in ancient China, but I couldn't find anything as far as picture goes with China. It goes all the way up to even London. There was a lady named Crazy Sally. She practiced out of a coffee shop, and a lot of the local nobility actually went to go see her. She was the first actual famous documented chiropractor. Then we get into a little bit more into the United States, and we go to Davenport, Iowa, where D.D. Palmer, he was famous for actually being the one that actually really got chiropractic off the ground as a whole and named it chiropractic, which means practicing with your hands. So D.D. Palmer had an adjustment with this gentleman right here, Harvey Lillard. Harvey was actually deaf his entire life, could not hear at all. And the weird thing about D.D. was he actually was a magnet healer, which is kind of weird. It deals with energy fields and stuff. Now, if you want to talk about pseudoscience, that is a pseudoscience. But what he ended up doing was he practiced his first adjustment on Harvey, and Harvey all of a sudden started to hear for the first time in his life. He thought he came up with a cure for deafness. That's not what ended up happening. So it can actually relieve some of the symptoms. But one of the things that he found was that the nerve that goes to the ears was being congested. And so he relieved that pressure off that nerve, allowing for that deafness to be relieved. So going all the way back there, D.D. Palmer has a long history. His family actually kept it going. B.J. Palmer actually still has a radio station out there, even though he's passed. And they even have 2 colleges in their names. So one of the things I get a lot of is why chiropractic care? So I want you guys to take a minute. I want you guys to think of your dream car, okay? A car that you guys have always wanted, all right? Now the drawback is you'll get this car, but it's the only car you'll have for the rest of your life, okay? That means you're going to have to maintain it. You're going to have to give it oil changes, do engine repairs, all this stuff. Maybe that changes your thoughts on it a little bit. Something a little more cheap than a Lamborghini maybe. Well, we need to think about this. Our spine is the exact same way, okay? We have one spine, okay? You want to take care of that. You don't want to be one of those people when you get older where you're hunched over like this and you're like, oh, I'm just getting old. I get that a lot in our office. Oh, I'm getting old. I can't move. Oh, you know, it's just because I'm 50, 60 years old. Well, we find that out not to be the case a lot of the time. So one of the things we want to do is take care of our spine. How do people measure health? Pain. When you're in pain, what do you think? Oh, I need to go see someone for this because I am hurting, right? So, the thing that hurts today only hurt worse tomorrow if you don't change something, right? So if you get a sports injury, all right, and you twist something, there can be lasting effects going forward. And some of those also, like, so for instance, I had a football player recently. Got overzealous, went after a lineman. Lineman ended up putting him straight on his butt. Came in, he's 16 years old, barely could walk. He was in pain for 2 weeks before he decided to come in, and it was only getting worse. So we first noticed the pain that he was experiencing, and then he came to me because it was only getting worse. Does that make sense? Any questions on that statement so far? No? Cool. You guys are making this easy. So, is pain good or bad? So, yes, it is good. And yes, it is bad because pain does hurt and no one likes being in pain, right? Fair. Is pain a feeling? It does. It's a signal that our body gives, right? We don't think of it that way. We think of it as a feeling, most of us. But it is something that our body releases to let us know something is not right. Make sense? So, healthcare stats. In the last 10 years, as a nation, as the United States, where do you think we are? Healthier or less healthy? Less healthy. Good answer. You guys know your stuff. Okay. Do you guys know what the 2 leading causes of death in the United States are? So yes, heart disease and cancer. Now, what do we do for preventative reasons for these things? Medication to relieve everything. So we use medications to even relieve headaches. Now, the question is, does medication actually relieve the headache or just the symptoms of the headache? Symptoms. So you use pain or medication to stop your stomach pain. You use medication to stop headaches. You use medication to stop most of our aches and pains nowadays, right? But again, most of the time, it's just to help with the symptoms of why our stomach is in duress, our head's in duress, or if something else is in pain, like we end up spraining our ankle. Well, you're probably going to take something for that, correct? So when your back hurts, sometimes you take Tylenol, right? To relieve that pain, right? Does it actually relieve the pain? No? You end up taking more, right? Yep, because it keeps hurting. So, most of you guys won't know who this is. Some of us will. He was the original Superman way back when. Some of us, he was the only Superman. But he got in an accident on a horse. He ended up being flipped off his horse, ended up fracturing his neck, and ended up being paralyzed from the neck down. Now what happened was he ended up fracturing his C1. Now that's the first vertebra in the neck. It's very important. There's over 1 billion nerve endings that end up going through that area. Okay? So when he fractured this, all those nerve endings went away as well. They all got torn up. So generally what I tell people is the way I look at things and the way your MD or your primary care look at things are 2 different perspectives. They're both extremely valuable and important for certain reasons. Okay? So they're in the emergency medicine portion, I'm in the preventative. Okay? Kind of like your dentist. Why do you go to the dentist? To prevent your teeth from having issues, right? No one wants surgery in your mouth. It's not the most comfortable thing. You end up with gauze in your mouth for a couple days. It's the same thing with us. We want to make sure that you guys don't have to go and get spinal surgery because that's not fun either. But the reason why he became paralyzed, and I'll end up bringing on my, oh, it's right here, was because the nerve endings got severed, right? We talked about that. So where's the brain on the spine? This should be a pretty easy answer. On the top, right? Pretty important piece, right? Don't want anything to happen to that. Well, it shoots signals, electrical signals, down our spinal cord, okay? Through your nerve roots. These nerve roots help our heart to beat, our lungs to breathe, our stomach to digest, along with several other functions, okay? Now, if something gets pinched on these, and this nerve goes to your lungs to help you breathe, do you think your lungs are going to work at 100% or less? Less, yeah. Okay, so you don't want that to happen, right? So our job as chiropractors is to make sure that actually gets removed, okay? Unfortunately for Mr. Superman, that wasn't the case. So the main communicator of the body is your brain, okay? So when you think, or when people think like, I need to go see a chiropractor, you guys already kind of answered. You think, chiropractors is to adjust, to help with joint pain, to help with popping, right? Had a question in the very beginning, what is the pop? That is a very good question. A release of air. Yes, I tell a lot of kids it's a bone fart. It's actually not an adjustment. A lot of adjustments don't have any pop to them at all, actually. Yes, so what ends up happening is when we end up moving the joints, nitrogen gas between the joint space gets released, and that ends up turning into a crack. It's actually nothing to have to do with the adjustment. An adjustment is honestly just moving a vertebra or a bone and pinching a nerve about 2 to 4 millimeters tops. Using Newton force is how we measure our adjustments. A lot of us think we need to go because we're in pain, but a lot of it has to do with even earlier. So my son was born a couple months ago. He ended up in, he was born fine, everything went great, but the thing was he was having a hard time feeding to one side. A lot of people don't know this, but the birth is also traumatic for the baby as well as the mom. It's a lot of work. And so sometimes babies have a hard time turning their head to one side or the other. And they'll start crying when you try to get them to go to one side or the other as well. Also, there's colic, where babies just don't stop crying for hours and hours and hours. The reason why is the babies don't have an actual good way of telling us, hey, this is what hurts. They just know to cry incessantly until you do something about it, right? So when my son was born, he couldn't feed to one side. We ended up adjusting him. He stopped crying, and he was able to feed on the other side just fine. And it was because there was pressure on that nerve. We're born with an innate intelligence where pain actually is a signal that we want to get rid of. Okay, and as we get older, a lot of our coaches and stuff will tell us, hey, we should probably ignore that pain, right? Like, we're okay, hey, suck it up, right? But yeah, so what we want to do is we want to make sure we pay attention to those things because it's generally our body giving us a sign that something is wrong. Does that make sense? Everyone on board with that? One of the things I forgot to mention, I think I forgot to put the slide in here, is where do you think we are in the world as far as consumption of medication? So we're the #1 consumer of medication. We're 50th in the world for health. It's kind of scary, huh? We do overuse medication, but there's a lot of other reasons too. Our diet is pretty bad. A lot of the stuff, huh? Fast food, yes. Fast food. A lot of us will go to those things. And the whole thing is we end up realizing other countries have banned a lot of the chemicals that we put in our food. So what I tell a lot of people is to do your own research and you'll find some answers that are pretty interesting actually. But one of the things that we need to do as a nation is we need to start focusing on why. Why are we hurting? Instead of just going, oh, we need to do this to resolve the pain that we're in. So to solve the initial issue, okay? So all that to say, so yeah, so what we're seeing here is wearing down the joint space, okay? So this happens kind of like when you get cavities, okay? Cavities start appearing once we start not taking care of our teeth, brushing our teeth, flossing, going and seeing a dentist, right? This happens to our spine if we don't actually take care of it, okay? Go see a chiropractor, exercise, stretch, all these things are very important. So these are called osteophyte formation. Osteophyte formation is when that joint is unstable. The body's initial response is to actually start to fuse. So these will actually, over time, join these 2 points. Okay, and once they join, it fuses the entire joint and you lose range of motion. So being able to turn your neck and stuff becomes a lot less. On top of that, you start ending up having impingements. So right here, you see that area right there? That's where the nerve roots come out. Okay, so these guys are pretty important. We talked about the pressure on them, right? Pressure of a dime inhibits its function by 60% within 15 minutes, okay? So we want to make sure the pressure on those joints actually stays relieved, okay? Well, you can't do that if the area is fused. It makes it very difficult. So the next option is surgery, where they go in there and they'll actually surgically remove the extra bone that's growing in those spaces. Does that make sense? So anyone know what this is? Scoliosis, my arch nemesis. No, so one of the things that we want to look at is how old a person is with scoliosis, because sometimes scoliosis can be changed by chiropractic care if we catch it early enough. So this right here, this person has a pretty bad case of it. I actually have a patient that looks just like this actually. She caught it early enough and we were able to actually reduce the curve in her spine, and she was actually able to go to her prom. She wasn't able to prior. So she was very scared to, I should say. But the reason why is she was in pain. She couldn't get out of pain, all right? So that right there, see how it's slipping forward? This is called anteriolisthesis, okay? It's the slipping forward of a disc, or sorry, a vertebra on a disc. Now this has a lot of bad implications. So right back here, that's where the nerve root comes out, right? Your spinal cord will actually start being impinged, all right? And so this causes a lot of symptoms. If it gets too bad, it can cause paralysis in the legs. Any questions on that? Comments? No? Okay. There's also the reverse of this called retrolisthesis. Retrolisthesis is basically the reverse, where the vertebra will actually slip backwards. I see this a lot in sports injuries, and so there's different degrees of it. And it can get pretty extreme. Yeah, so we try to catch this early, okay? Go to bulging discs. So this is what we call a bulging disc. This happens a lot in football injuries and also in working class adults who work a lot with their hands and heavy lifting. So a bulging disc will end up having a little bulge, and it actually pushes on the nerve structures. And you'll notice when you lean back, it hurts more. Leaning forward hurts a little less because it ends up taking away the bulge from that actual area. So what we do, actually, chiropractors can help this, So can our MDs and stuff. They can give medication for that, but that also just relieves the symptoms. Generally, surgeons are where you want to go if it's too bad. If you come to us early enough, what we can do is actually get rid of the bulge. It'll actually reduce it. So what we do is we do something called decompression. Decompression therapy is where we slowly pull you apart, okay? Kind of like the rack. Actually feels really good. A lot of people fall asleep on it. But as they gently pull, okay, it causes a negative pressure inside the disc, okay? So then the material gets reabsorbed and actually allows nutrition to go back into the disc. As this happens, it actually heals the area and allows you to go about your life without any pain and actually a healed disc. These are just some of the things that we actually treat. We also do soft tissue stuff. So I'll treat stuff like frozen shoulder, where people can't move their shoulder anymore. So we also treat plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis, it's a large tendon at the bottom of the foot, okay? And what ends up happening is it ends up getting bundled up. And some people will say it feels like their foot's being pulled in on itself. And they can't get it to release. It causes a lot of pain, okay? We actually can treat that as well with something called Graston therapy, where we break up that tendon, and it prevents a lot of people from having surgery long term. Pregnant moms, do a lot with pregnant moms. It's a big, fun area. We have a lot of people actually go just and treat pregnant moms and newborns. And newborns are the funnest to adjust. But then you also have different avenues as well. There's other areas of chiropractic. Does anyone know of a different area besides those in chiropractic care? There's actual animal chiropractors. So animal chiropractors will treat horses, cattle, dogs, cats. Show dogs and horses are the main ones that a lot of them treat. But they have to go an extra 2 years in order to become an animal chiropractor. So we're going into the college part of things. So college is actually a full-grown doctorate, okay? So you'll need your bachelor's, and then you'll end up going into the doctorate program. There's also something that Cleveland does specifically where they do a doctorate and a bachelor's put together. So you'll work on them at the same time. At the end, you'll just have a little more work to do. There's like a 40-page paper, I believe, at the end. Thank God I didn't have to do that, but a lot of people chose to do it. Your first year, you'll be dissecting everywhere from the head of a human all the way down to the toes. You smell like formaldehyde for a while, but it's really interesting. If you're wanting to do something doctoral, this is definitely the place you want to be. We actually have more class hours than an MD. That's a little brag on us chiropractors, but gotta do it a little bit. We learn medical imaging, as you can see. We learn how to read CTs, we learn how to read x-rays, MRIs. That's actually a specific field in chiropractic where some people will just go and that's what they're known for. And people all over the world will call them to get answers. We end up taking 4 board exams and the PT board as well. Their usual dropout rate or failure rate is about 30% in the nation. General dropout rate in this college is also about between 40 and 50% now. But as you get through, and when you get through, there is a reward to it. So both professionally and personally, okay? One, you're gonna be able to help a lot of people. It's a lot of fun. Helping babies not cry and seeing the parent's face when their baby's not crying anymore. Helping an athlete who's not been able to play for a year because their shoulder or their back's been hurting too bad, and they're able to go to colleges and play sports because of that. There's a lot of cool stories I can just tell you. But also on the personal side, we all want to make a lot of money, right? Right? Pretty much, yeah. Chiropractors can make an average of $139,000 a year. I have some friends that make a lot more than that. They also worked a lot harder for it. Just like everything else, high risk, lots of work, lots of reward most of the time at the end of it. That's Cleveland, actually. So this school up here, I have a whole bunch of information on them. They're the #1 in the nation. They will prepare you for your boards. That's where I went, yep. It's one of the hardest schools. I wanted to go to the best of the best. There were days I was really happy I went to the best of the best, and there were days where I was really upset that I went to the best of the best. But I'll tell you, it was one of the most rewarding experiences I ever did. It provided a lot for me and my family. I get to put smiles on people's faces. At first, it's a lot of hard work. The first 2 years, I worked about 90-hour weeks. Going from there now, but today I'm only working 4 days a week. I'm able to spend 3 days with my family, working about 36 to 38 hours a week. and it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of work to get here, but it was fun. So again, he asked, you know, is chiropractic something where you have to do a schedule? Again, think of it like dentistry. You go, what, twice a year for it, but you only use your teeth, what, maybe an hour a day, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe snacking, right? You're using your spine how often? All day, every day. Even at sleep, we found we're still using our spine. So yes, you do go to a chiropractor a little more in the beginning to solve the issue, but then we go to something called maintenance care where we just keep everything happy, which is generally twice a month. Sometimes, generally for like your guys' age, once a month generally does really well unless you're an athlete. So athletes generally need a little more. Yes? Do you have to sleep a certain way? There are many ways you can sleep, and sleeping habits are extremely hard to change. Sleeping on your side, sleeping on your back is really good. Stomach, generally you don't want to do that because what will end up happening is you end up creating what we call a hyperlordosis, and you'll see the people that are like this. Yeah, you don't want to sleep on your stomach long term. But if you sleep on your side, I tell a lot of people there is a proper way to do it. Generally want a pillow between your legs. That kind of makes it about shoulder width because that will actually allow the pelvis to relax, because if you don't, then you end up going like this, and there have been cases where you get a little pigeon-toed from it. It's fun. But that takes years and years and years for that to happen. Most of the time you just end up with a really uncomfortable hip. But thanks for having me, everyone. I appreciate you all, and hope you guys have a great day.